Tonight, the historic papacy of Pope Leo XIV, the first American pope. We are here in Vatican City. And tonight we're learning more about what happened inside that conclave and what the Pope is already signaling about the direction of his papacy.
And I know I can rely on each and every one of you to walk with me.
And those first words in English from his first Mass in the Sistine Chapel, from what his papacy could mean to the Catholic Church, to more insight from those who knew him. We have it all covered tonight. And back at home, the disturbing headline again about Newark International Airport. Those screens going dark this morning for air traffic controllers yet again. What does this mean as a busy summer travel season is just weeks away? President Trump tonight backtracking on China, sharply reducing what he says is a fair tariff as the two countries prepare to talk trade for the first time. And China's president is in Russia tonight, where our Martha Raddatz reports.
Chinese troops marching alongside the Russians chanting the words fire and force. Russia celebrating a past victory, but the battle with Ukraine raging on.
Tonight, the mayor of a major American city arrested by ICE. What we're learning about what happened. Soviet-era spacecraft launched in 1972 bound for Venus never left Earth's orbit. Tonight, it's hurtling toward Earth. What we know about where it could land.
From ABC News, this is Prime with Linsey Davis. Reporting tonight from the Vatican.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis here in Vatican City. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We'll, of course, have much more on the celebrations in just a moment after the very first American cardinal was elected to be the next pope. Pope Leo delivered his first Mass this morning. But first, with tens of millions of Americans set to travel as the summer season gets underway, we begin with another massive and concerning issue at one of the country's busiest airports. We're learning of another major blackout at Newark International. Radar screens going completely dark for air traffic controllers for about 90 seconds this morning. This is the third incident in less than 2 weeks. And it came just a day after the Trump administration announced an overhaul of the troubled U.S. air traffic control system and plans to modernize it. But the question many are asking is, why hasn't this been done sooner? And what will happen until then? We have John Nance standing by to answer your questions. But first, ABC's transportation correspondent Gio Benitez leads us off.
Tonight, another terrifying failure at Newark Airport. Air traffic control radar screens going black at Newark for about 90 seconds just before 4 a.m. this morning.
Our scope shift went black again.
Controllers warning an incoming jet that they might not be able to communicate if the radars and radios fail again.
Section 651, we just had another brief radar outage, so just in case that happens again, for your purposes, if you can't reach me, just stay at or above 3,000 until you're passing Morristown, and then you can just clear for the approach from there.
This happened in the middle of the night when there were very few airplanes. Someday it's going to happen where there's lots of bad weather and you'll have airplanes flying blind.
It's the third radar outage at Newark in less than 2 weeks, and it's led to thousands of delays and cancellations.
Our thanks to Gio Benitez. For more now, let's bring in ABC News contributor and former Air Force pilot John Nance. John, another instance of screens going black today. Just how concerned are you about this latest development?
Very concerned, because when 90 seconds of a blank screen for an air traffic controller with airplanes in the sky is terrifying. And to have this happen again, it's not that it hasn't happened across the country in the past, but we really are paying more attention to it now, and we should.
And really don't want to spook anyone, just asking you personally, based on your knowledge, would you fly in and out of Newark Airport right now?
Well, the only reason that I would avoid Newark is not because of safety right now, because that they're stretching the flights out and slowing them down in order to take advantage of the number of controllers they have. It's basically the problem is the connections and the delays. Those are going to be endemic for quite a while.
And we heard about those major updates to the air traffic controller system, but at best, that will take millions of dollars in several years as millions get ready to fly this summer in just a few days and weeks. Should Americans be confident that the skies are safe and that they'll land and take off safely?
Linsey, I think they can be confident the skies are safe, but what is not safe is the assumption that this is going to be fixed in 3 to 5 years. That's nonsense. It's going to take 15 very hard years, billions of dollars, many billions, and it's going to have to be appropriated by a House and Senate that don't seem to be able to agree on anything.
What advice would you give to whether it's the Trump administration or the FAA about how to bring back confidence to the typical person who's about to board a flight?
Well, first of all, lay out the truth of the matter that we have been behind in terms of the number of traffic controllers for probably about 30 years now. And it's going to get better slowly, only if it has an awful lot of attention paid to it and a lot of money put in by Congress. This business of authorizing the FAA in increments over time has been just disastrous to this sort of thing.
All right. Super helpful insight. John Nance, our thanks to you as always. We are here in Vatican City where celebrations continue after the historic election of the first American Cardinal, Robert Prevost from Chicago, now Pope Leo XIV. Less than 24 hours after the start of his papacy, he entered the Sistine Chapel again, this time celebrating his first Mass with the College of Cardinals who chose him during the secret conclave. While the ritual of the Mass was in Italian, the Pope began his first homily speaking in English, saying to the Cardinals, "I know I can rely on each and every one of you to walk with me." Back in America, family, friends, and even his alma mater of Villanova celebrated his election. A feeling of happiness that also echoed with the faithful around the world. While we're just in the first hours of a new era for the church, there could be some clues about what Pope Leo XIV's papacy could mean. We have teams all over the world as we get to know the man who's now the leader of more than 1 billion Catholics. Here's World News Tonight anchor David Muir in Vatican City.
Tonight, less than 24 hours after being named the first American Pope, Pope Leo XIV celebrating his first Mass. Returning to the Sistine Chapel, where he was just hours before, among the 133 cardinals who decided he was the one. As he returned to the Sistine Chapel, Pope Leo XIV blessing the cardinals who chose him, the cardinals bowing to the new Pope. Conducting the Mass in Italian, but beginning his homily in English.
I begin with a word in English.
Saying this to the cardinals from all over the world who placed their faith in him.
You have called me to carry that cross and to be blessed with that mission. And I know I can rely on each and every one of you to walk with me as we continue as a church, as a community of friends of Jesus, as believers, to announce the good news, to announce the gospel.
Those cardinals delivering a surprise to the world with their decision that came 24 hours, 21 minutes after those doors closed at the Sistine Chapel, the conclave. The announcement, we have a pope.
Habemus Papam.
And then history made on the balcony over St. Peter's Square. The cardinal born Robert Francis Prevost in Chicago, choosing to be called Pope Leo XIV, waving to the faithful. The world seeing the emotion clear on his face. His first words, "Peace be with you all."
La pace sia con tutti voi.
Tonight, the celebrations back in his hometown of Chicago that began with the children who were watching at Our Lady of Mount Carmel Academy. Cheering when they learned the first American Pope was from their town. Outside Philadelphia, bells ringing in Pope Leo's honor at Villanova University, where he studied mathematics. Tonight, Pope Leo already spending time with the faithful. It was just hours after he appeared on that balcony. He was out in Vatican City giving blessings and visiting the palazzo where he lived until he was named Pope. And tonight here, the new images from the Vatican, the official document attesting the acceptance of Pope Leo of his election, the name right there in Latin, Leo XIV. The Pope choosing the name Leo, widely believed in honor of Pope Leo XIII, who was focused on human dignity, the rights of workers, and the poor. Walking into today's Mass, Pope Leo choosing to wear simple black shoes like his predecessor, Pope Francis, instead of the red shoes favored by Pope Benedict and others before him. And another question here, where will he live? Tonight, Italian media now reporting Pope Leo will continue to live at Santa Marta, where Pope Francis lived, at least for now, saying there is renovation work being done at the Grand Papal Apartment at the Apostolic Palace. Father John Walk and Father James Martin on the decision he'll have to make. Do you think he stays there, or does he move into the Grand Papal Apartment?
I think he moves into the Grand Papal Apartments. I think I visited Pope Francis at Casa Santa Marta. It was very simple, and he liked that. He liked being around people, but I don't know if I would want to live in a guest house for 20 years. I think I'd like something a little more permanent. So I would forgive him completely if he moved back.
I suspect he'll be moving back, and partly it's because the truth is that having the Pope living with you, it's very awkward for the people who have to be there.
And the
all
residents.
sorts of security.
Born in 1955 and growing up on Chicago's South Side, his brothers and his classmates knew this boy had a special relationship with God. He is now 69 and considered young and could lead the Catholic Church for many years to come. Before he became Pope, he spoke of his relationship with Pope Francis and his views on the Church. It was just last August.
He has a profound commitment to justice and charity and mercy. There are dynamic, life-giving experiences that do fill us with hope, and we have to learn to share that message with others. It depends on all of us.
His work transcending borders, serving the Church in the U.S., in Rome, and in Peru, where he was a missionary, a priest, and then a bishop in Chiclayo, Peru. His focus, the poor. Tonight here, the images of Pope Leo back in 2014, singing Feliz Navidad with the youth ministry there. It was just 24 hours ago, children at the local Catholic school there cheering as his name was announced. They consider him family. Tonight, our Matt Rivers is in Peru.
David, we're in the town of Chiclayo in northwest Peru, where Pope Leo spent decades working with the poor, preaching out of that cathedral there as bishop. The people of this town really see him as one of their own. They're thrilled he's now Pope. That sign there on City Hall says Papa Leon, Pope Leo, Chiclayo, blessed.
And back here in Rome tonight, the Americans we have met during our time here, including the McManus family from Long Island. Here for their daughter's wedding, they had no idea they would witness history, too. They hope Pope Leo can unite.
Do you hope he has impact back home in the United States, too?
I would hope so now. You know, I hope the United States sees this as a big plus for us, and hope for that reason to build those bridges and to bring those people back together.
And when he said yesterday from the balcony, God loves everyone, did that land?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It does. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And if people didn't know that before, hopefully they heard that and they know it now.
His brother Justin is studying at Villanova, where Pope Leo graduated.
You're studying at Villanova.
Yes, I am.
And suddenly you learn that the Pope went to school at Villanova.
Yeah.
And when he stood up there and talked about building bridges with the world in this moment when there's so much conflict, what did that mean to you?
You know, that just meant the world. Just to have him, someone who has that such stronger connection to me as a Villanova alumni, being able to hear him say those words definitely hit my heart directly. So it's really a touching moment for me.
Their mother, optimistic after what she heard on that balcony.
Kindness is key. So I think everyone just needs to be kind to each other. It means a lot. And if they keep pressing it, it's going to happen. You got to be hopeful. You got to believe.
Hopeful for the American Pope.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Our thanks to David Muir. Now to Inside the Secret Conclave, we're joined by ABC's chief international correspondent, Mr. James Longman. And James, after having some conversations, you were chasing the Cardinals down again today. What were you able to ascertain as far as what went on behind those closed doors?
Well, there are a couple of Vatican insiders who we've keep going back to over the last week because the Cardinals don't want to tell us anything, but these guys seem to be able to get it out of them. So we think that in the run-up to conclave, in congregation, Leo seemed to be making an impact, and that was because for the first time there was no buonasera, there was not much Italian. People were speaking in English, which was not normal for cardinals. So necessarily he became someone they were all communicating with. And then as the days went on, the Latin American college swung behind him. The Asian college then joined forces with the Latin American because his English was so important to them. Some of the African cardinals who again feel like English is so important for a communicator. And then it felt like Parolin, we were all talking about him, the former Secretary of State. He then in the end had to concede and he told his supporters to get behind now Leo XIV. So it's fascinating to hear kind of what might have gone on. We have to say we don't know for sure.
For sure.
But that sounds like could have been what happened.
really fascinating to hear and still try and read the tea leaves, even a few days old now. So give us a sense of what you think his biggest challenges might be in the coming days.
This week is going to be crucial. Every single move he makes is going to be scrutinized. He is likely going to go out to Francis' tomb. I would expect him to do that, to pay homage. He has already paid homage to Pope Francis. We'll see what he does here in Rome. I imagine he'll go for a walk. Maybe he'll get an ice cream. I mean, every move, we'll be there watching it, but he can't really afford to put a foot wrong. So far, though, he has managed to walk that line. I was particularly struck today. He had the crozier of Benedict, and he had black shoes like Francis. He's walking that line.
And that's what they say. He's a guy who walks the middle of the road. Seems he's proving that in the first 24 hours at least. James Longman, what a pleasure it's been to be here with you. Thank you.
It's been so lovely.
Why the name Leo? We have more on the choice and what this could mean for his papacy.
After the smoke billowed, the drapes parted to reveal 69-year-old Robert Prevost, the first American to emerge onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica as Pope. His historic election stunned the Roman Catholic Church and the world. As he waved to onlookers, they erupted into a roar, chanting his new name. In selecting the name Leo, he joins an exclusive club with only 13 other members. The moniker just may be symbolic of a role he plans to emulate as the church looks to usher in a transformative era, initiated first by Pope Francis. His namesake, Pope Leo XIII, was known as Pope of the Workers and spent his papacy advocating for their rights.
I think by taking the name of Leo the 14th, Pope Leo signaled for us that he wants to put concern for Catholic social teaching at the center of his pontificate. The idea that the Church's strong commitment throughout its entire history of concern for how humans react to the world and economic life also has to bring a concern for mercy and for workers and for the poor.
In his first homily as Pope, Leo started by addressing the cardinals in English.
You have called me to carry that cross and to be blessed with that mission.
But the burden for any pope can be a heavy one. The church faces a host of financial woes, with a budget shortfall of nearly $94 million, according to Reuters. Money troubles, coupled with waning interest in its message, particularly in the West and among young people, could have influenced Leo's election. Until Thursday, conventional wisdom was that an American was unlikely to be selected, given the geopolitical power already wielded by the United States. Leo's new role now rivals President Trump's as being one of the most influential Americans in the world.
Think about the possible conflicts of interest. The United States, the most powerful nation in the world, with all of its geopolitical power and advantages and suasion over the world. And then the idea that the spiritual leader of 1.4 billion Roman Catholics, a man of spiritual power, a man of prayer, a leader of a religious community worldwide, would also share the American citizenship. I guess it just didn't wash well with papal electors for the last 2 centuries. Finally, somehow, we've gotten over that taboo.
Today, his words offered a reminder to the 1.4 billion Catholics around the world to listen to the teachings of Jesus.
Perché la mancanza di fede porta spesso con sé drammi quali la perdita del senso della vita, l'oblio della misericordia, la violazione della dignità della persona nelle sue forme più drammatiche, la crisi della famiglia e tante altre ferite di cui la nostra società soffre, e non poco.
Unlike Pope Francis, who was more progressive, Leo is considered a centrist. His words today could be an indicator that he plans to continue championing Francis's message of inclusivity, especially for migrants. As a cardinal, Leo spent most of his career in Peru, where he holds dual citizenship. There were also internal divisions facing Leo's papacy. The church's own strife between traditionalists and more progressive members, particularly on issues like LGBTQ+, has left a wide division that calls for new solutions to these social and economic issues.
What direction would you like to see him take the church into?
I would like him to follow the legacy of Pope Francis personally, because as head of state and head of church, of course, I hope that he leads towards a path of peace and openness and acceptance towards all people, because to me that's what also religion is about.
Leo, who has spent the majority of his career straddling two different cultures, could be seen as a calculated attempt to build a bridge in a world divided by multifaceted ideologies. The first North American pope, similar to his predecessor, the first Latin American pope, just may be the link that joins the two vastly different worlds.
All of us here at ABC News and all journalists really have been trying over the last day and a half to learn as much as we possibly can about Pope Leo, his family's truly American story, his education, his years of missionary work in Peru. Our Alex Perez spoke to one of the Pope's brothers south of Chicago and has this story.
With that grand introduction, the world met Pope Leo XIV.
La pace sia con tutti voi.
Now leader to 1.4 billion Catholics and the first pope born in the U.S. But here in Illinois, he's little brother Rob.
I don't think it's really sunk in. It's kind of surreal. It's great pride.
John's now famous brother, born Robert Prevost, is much like any other Southside Chicagoan. The 69-year-old is a huge White Sox fan who enjoys a slice from Aurelio's Pizza. And the two brothers play Wordle and Words with Friends.
The world will now call your brother Pope.
That's right.
You arguably know him better than most people. What kind of person is he?
A regular, run-of-the-mill person. I think because he was trained in missionary work in South America for so many years, he will be looking out for the disenfranchised. He will be looking out for the poor. He will be looking out for those that don't have a voice.
How is he different from Pope Francis?
I think they kind of believed in the same issues, so I don't know that they'll be much different.
Growing up, young Robert was influenced by his mother's two sisters. His aunts were both nuns. His brother tells us early on, the youngest of three took particular reverence to the Holy Gospel.
I think when he came out of the womb, he knew. He knew right away. I don't think he's ever questioned it. I don't think he's ever thought of anything else. He just knew. Some people play school or some people play army. He played priest, and we had to go to Mass. The ironing board was the altar.
So that's some of your childhood memories.
That's absolutely correct. So you knew right then and there, this is not a joke.
That's what he wanted.
That's right. When he was in first grade, a woman across the street said he would be the first American pope. In first grade, they said that.
First grade.
Uh-huh.
We used to tease him, you're going to be the pope one day. Ha ha. Is that, it just had it about him.
After graduating from St. Augustine Seminary High School, Pope Leo continued on a righteous path, attending the private Catholic University of Villanova, earning a degree in math in 1977. The bells tolling in celebration.
As a Villanova student, and I think as someone that maybe has higher aspirations in the world and wants to go places, and it's pretty possible from this school. And as it's seen, big things can come out of here, and I think that's pretty cool.
In 1985, the then priest was dispatched to Peru, where for a decade he served the Order of St. Augustine.
Augustine lived in the late 300s and early 400s. He was about values like caritas unitas and veritas, truth, unity, and love. And so I think these are kind of the GPS that Cardinal Prevost and now Pope Leo will use in terms of his leadership.
He returned again to Peru in 2014 with orders from Pope Francis to serve as apostolic administrator of the Diocese of Chiclayo.
Cuando fue cardenal, nos mandaron dando y le dijimos, uy, y después sigue Papa.
For those watching in Chiclayo, the dual citizen and speaker of 5 languages is also one of their own, a pope from the Americas. On his path to becoming Pope Leo, he left an indelible impression.
If you were going to pick a person in your class who was going to become the Pope, Bob would be the person.
Former classmate Judy Connolly studied at the Catholic Theological Union with Pope Leo, the only woman allowed.
while everybody in the world thought an American becoming Pope was probably the longest shot you could ever not bet on, I really had the sense that who this man is would make him a very viable contender.
Back in Illinois, we learn Pope Leo's two brothers, John and Louis, as of Thursday, had not had a chance to speak.
There he is. What's your feeling with what's going on?
It's pretty awesome. It was quite the surprise, but then again, it wasn't. Because I had a feeling when I went to bed last night after they didn't, after the first day, that today or first thing tomorrow, he had a really good chance of winning. Just because of his history, background, I thought he had a pretty good chance.
What do you two brothers say to each other when your brother becomes Pope, your little brother becomes Pope?
I guess we better make arrangements to go to Rome.
Our thanks to Alex Perez. Joining us tonight is the Archbishop of San Antonio, Texas, Most Reverend Gustavo Garcia Siller. Archbishop, we thank you so much for your time. We know you're a longtime friend of Pope Leo XIV. You all met more than 20 years ago. Tell us about the time that you've gotten to spend with him over the years.
Well, I met him in 2003 in Chicago, and it was in the context that he was a leader in his religious order, the Augustinians, and Pope now Leo XIV. He was visiting with members of his community, and I was invited for a social, for dinner, for mass, to pray with them on certain occasions. And we used to live like a few minutes from each other, like 10, 15 minutes. So it's how we're able to connect. At that time, I was Archbishop and Auxiliary Bishop in Chicago. He's kind of calm person, very profound in his elaboration of thoughts, and very with simplicity in his actions. So we got along quite well, and we became friends very easily.
Tell us about the significance of the name he chose, Pope Leo. Why do you think that that's so symbolic, based on what you know about him?
Okay. That name is following Leo XIII. And during that time of that Pope, he was very involved in promoting the social doctrine of the Church. Particularly, one document that reflects his mind was the Rerum Novarum document. And that document was in support of workers, that they will live with dignity, they will be receiving fair wages. And it was kind of a revolution at that time. And Pope Leo XIV now, he worked in his province as an Augustinian, particularly in Chicago area, very involved in his comments, in his ways of connecting with people, very clear about social justice and human rights. And then when he was sent as a bishop to Peru, it was an impoverished community, and he was able to lift them up, to raise them up.
The new Pope, as you know, is tied to Latin America, is fluent in multiple languages, including Spanish. What kind of impact or influence do you think that that will bring to the Catholic Church?
I will tell you, my experience yesterday was of impact. He spoke briefly in Spanish, but the fact that he did it, not to show that he knows Spanish, but to know that he loved the people that he served in Peru. And when he said, "Peace be with you all," and then how he emphasized that the world needs peace and that he wants to be a man of peace, and calling us and challenging all of us to be build paths of peace, it's just filled my heart, and I have been very excited, but with a lot of confidence. Of course, it's the first Pope that I can say that I have met before.
Answered prayer for many, it sounds like. Thank you so much. Still ahead, a mayor arrested at an ICE facility while there for oversight tonight. Outrage over what's being called an unjust arrest. But hear what the Justice Department says happened. Plus, there are two of the biggest cases in the country. Up next, we break down the big developments today in the cases against hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs and the Menendez brothers. There were major developments today in two high-profile cases we're following. Sean Diddy Combs' trial for sex trafficking charges and the legal push to free the Menendez brothers. Let's bring in ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer. Brian, let's start with Diddy. The jury was supposed to be set today, but now that's planned for Monday instead. Give us a sense of what happened there.
Yeah, so with the Diddy case, they had gone through the lion's share of jury selection, going through 4 cause challenges. And what happened was that yesterday they had those 45 qualified prospective jurors, but 2 of them were eliminated. One, it seemed, had somewhat of cold feet and said they can no longer serve on this case. Another apparently misinformed the court as to whether or not they have any participation in an ongoing civil case, the civil case being that against the city. Now, both sides had said they worried about picking a jury today and coming on Monday and more people having cold feet and then having to go back and get more jurors. So they decided to hold off on the final part of jury selection, which they anticipate to only last about 10 to 15 minutes, show up early on Monday around 8:30 and hopefully be able to start on time with a full set of 12 jurors and 6 alternates.
So it doesn't seem like it's really delayed things too much. What do we know about the first witnesses who will be called to the stand?
So we know through some of just the housekeeping that the prosecution says that there will be 3 witnesses that will start off. We don't know the exact order of the first 2. One would be an escort and one was identified as either individual 3 or 4. But we are told that the 3rd witness is victim 1. And from the information that they've spoke about that person, it seems to be very clear that Cassie will be, as the government calls them, victim 1 or the alleged victim number 1.
Sticking with the defense strategy, they plan to acknowledge his role in domestic violence now, but say it didn't lead to coercion. How will they try to convince a jury that those actions are not connected?
So first, why that argument is being made. The defense is making the argument that these are isolated incidences of domestic abuse. They are conceding that Sean Combs was a physical abuser of Cassie. And they're also saying that Cassie in herself also assaulted Sean Combs, that this was a very tumultuous relationship. And the way they're trying to go about this is saying that there were isolated domestic abuse situations that couldn't be associated with perhaps state-level charges. But that assault, that abuse, that was not used to coerce Cassie to cross state lines and to participate in freak-offs, thus eliminating a very crucial aspect of sex trafficking. They're trying to basically say that he's guilty of something, but not guilty of the crimes in which he's being accused of here.
Now to the Menendez brothers trying to get out of prison after being sentenced to life for the killing of their parents who they allege sexually abused them. What came out in their risk assessments and how could that impact sentencing?
So some of the big parts of that risk assessment is that they are a moderate risk of danger to society if they were to be released. We also heard about some infractions. Mark Garagos has said some of the more serious ones have happened later, but talks about helping inmates with tax fraud, with the buying and trading of drugs, and also using people's numbers or PINs illegally, using other inmates' information to make those calls. Now, it seemed like the judge kind of thought these were not that big of a deal in the grand scheme for resentencing, but while this may help them at resentencing, if the judge, for example, was to resentence them to a set number of years that they would be allowed to go in front of a parole board and ask for parole, I could see a parole board looking at some of these issues, as I have seen in many cases that I've covered, both as a defense attorney and as a legal contributor, and the parole board could look at some of these infractions and look very poorly on them and may deny them parole, thus having them to wait another 2 or 3 years to come back to parole.
All right, well, thank you for following both of these cases for us. Brian, appreciate you as always. Be sure to listen to Brian's podcast, Bad Rap, The Case Against Diddy, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we're staying on top of this case with our ABC News live show, Burden of Proof, The Case Against Diddy, airing daily at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. China's President Xi is in Russia for that country's Victory Day celebration, and our Martha Raddatz is in Moscow, where Western journalists have generally been denied visas for the past few years. Hi, Martha.
Lindsay, it was an impressive show of military might in Moscow's Red Square, celebrating the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II with plenty of military hardware, President Vladimir Putin presiding, and right by his side, China's President Xi, their alliance front and center. With Chinese troops marching alongside the Russians chanting the words fire and force, Russia celebrating a past victory, but the battle with Ukraine raging on. Putin had called for a 3-day ceasefire to coincide with the parade, but that did not happen. Ukrainian officials now vowing to commit to a 30-day pause in hostilities after calling the 3-day pause a farce. The Russians have agreed to none of this. Lindsay?
Martha Raddatz reporting from Moscow. Thank you. Former U.S. Supreme Court Justice David Souter has died at his New Hampshire home. A lifelong public servant, judicial moderate, and advocate for humanities and civics education, Souter was nominated by President George H.W. Bush and surprised conservative Republicans, siding with liberal justices time and time again. Souter retired in 2009 after serving over 19 years on the bench. David Souter was 85 years old. A federal judge in Vermont ordered a Tufts University doctoral student be released on bail from ICE custody after her visa was revoked by the Trump administration. In his scathing ruling, the U.S. district judge said the government must release Turkish national Rumeysa Öztürk while her case proceeds. The judge said the government had not produced any evidence against her, aside from an op-ed she co-wrote in her student newspaper last year. Newark's Mayor Ras Baraka was arrested today at the city's ICE detention center. The state's interim U.S. attorney claims he ignored warnings to leave. 3 Congress members say they were with Baraka conducting oversight. The Democratic candidate for governor has been outspoken against the center and the administration's immigration policies. Coming up, the FDA's latest move today in the government's effort to weed out artificial dyes in the food we eat. But first, with the first ever American pontiff, a look at Catholicism in America. Welcome back, everyone. History was made at the Vatican yesterday with the first U.S.-born pope in the Catholic Church's history. Pope Leo's ascension comes at a pivotal time for Catholicism in his country of birth, with growing numbers of right-wing Catholics in positions of influence and factions with their own ideas of just what Catholicism should be. Let's take a look at the state of America's Catholics by the numbers. The U.S. Catholic Church is the 4th largest of any country worldwide, and Catholics now make up 1/3 of the cabinet of President Trump, who often clash with Pope Francis. That number includes Vice President J.D. Vance. Overall, 20% of Americans identify as Catholic, according to the Pew Research Center, a number that has been stable over the past decade, but is a decline from the 24% who identified as Catholic in 2007. A Pew study from February also found 60% of surveyed American Catholics preferred a more inclusive Catholic Church, even if it meant changing some teachings. And 78% of surveyed Catholics viewed Pope Francis favorably in another February Pew survey. But those ratings show a partisan gap. Just 69% of the Republican or Republican-leaning Catholics in that survey viewed the late Pope favorably. Compare that to 88% favorability among Democrat or Democrat-leaning Catholics. And still ahead, how Americans everywhere are paying homage to the world's very first American Pope. But first, a look at some of the day's other big headlines, including the first ever at-home kit that can test for a certain kind of cancer. More than 1,000 measles cases in the U.S. for the first time in years. 2 major moves by the FDA, which include at-home kits to test for cervical cancer and a failed spacecraft set to crash land back on Earth. These stories and more in tonight's rundown.
The U.S. has surpassed 1,000 measles cases for the first time in 5 years, according to new data from the CDC. Cases have been confirmed in 30 states. Among the confirmed cases, the CDC says about 96% are among people who are unvaccinated or whose vaccination status is unknown. The Wisconsin father of a teenager who killed a student and a teacher in a school shooting last year made his first court appearance today. The judge ordered Jeffrey Rupnow could be released on $20,000 cash bail, but said he would be fitted with a GPS monitor prior to release. Rupnow's charges include intentionally giving a dangerous weapon to a person under 18, resulting in death. Prosecutors say Rupnow's daughter carried out a deadly shooting in December at Abundant Life Christian School in Madison, Wisconsin. Authorities say she died from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot. The FDA has approved an at-home testing kit for cervical cancer. The test, called the Teal Wand, is administered in the privacy of a home and is intended to be an alternative for women who cannot or do not want to get a pelvic exam in a doctor's office. This would be the first test to be fully approved for at-home use. The American Cancer Society estimates more than 4,300 women die each year from cervical cancer. Today, the Food and Drug Administration also approved 2 color additives from natural sources. It also expanded approval of a third meaning for how it can be used in a wider range of food products. The move falls in line with the Department of Health and Human Services' goal to eliminate artificial food dyes. The approved additives include an extract derived from algae and butterfly pea flour. President Trump fired the Librarian of Congress effective immediately. It comes just 1 year before her term was set to expire. Carla Hayden was the first woman to serve in the role. House Democrats called the firing, quote, unjust and a complete disgrace. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries said her removal is an attempt to whitewash American history. Today, the White House defended the move, saying Hayden promoted DEI and put out books, quote, inappropriate for children. A failed Soviet-era spacecraft that became trapped in Earth's orbit by mistake more than 50 years ago is forecast to make a crash landing back on Earth in the early morning hours of Saturday. That according to space experts. Cosmos 482 was launched in 1972 as part of the Soviet Union's program intended to explore Venus. Since 70% of the Earth is covered in water, it's likely the probe will land in the ocean.
Finally tonight, as America celebrates the first pope from the United States, our Terry Moran has more on Pope Leo, his background, and those fateful moments when he found out he would be leading the 1.4 billion Catholics.
Known to his brothers as Rob, to his friends as Bob, Pope Leo XIV, formerly Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, grew up here on East 141st Street in Dolton, Illinois, just across the line from Chicago's South Side. And he attended Mass at St. Mary's of the Assumption. Raised in a Catholic family, the future pope seemed to be destined from a remarkably early age for a religious life. His brother John.
I think from the time he was 5 or 6 years old, he knew this was his fate. Not that he would be a pope, that he would be a priest.
As a boy, his brothers tell us, while they were playing cops and robbers, their little brother played priest, holding Mass using his mother's ironing board as an altar and Necco wafers for communion. This week, inside the conclave, the other American cardinals say that Prevost didn't advocate for himself in any big speech, but joined the conversations in small groups.
A lot of dialogue occurred at mealtime, coffee break, those moments when you can engage one another.
And then, on the second day of the conclave, when it was clear how the votes were going in the Sistine Chapel, he seemed anguished, says his friend Cardinal Joseph Tobin, who calls him Bob.
Then I walked back and I took a look at Bob, and because his name had been floating around, and he had his head in his hands.
When he crossed the 89-vote threshold to be elected, a wave of applause rang through the Sistine Chapel, and when he accepted election, the anguish was gone.
And then when he accepted it, it was like he was made for it.
The new pope needed to choose a name. Chicago's Cardinal Blaise Cupich telling me about that moment.
And he was asked, okay, what name do you take? And they said Leo.
And again, another applause, because that was a stunner too. People were thinking, oh, Francis II, Paul or John or somebody else, but Leo. We knew we had something new here.
In Chicago, they're bursting with pride. The Chicago Sun-Times dubbing Leo the Pope.
And one last note tonight from here at St. Peter's Square. It's been an extraordinary week of watching Catholics here and around the world come together. And at his first Mass today, Pope Leo pledged to lift up ordinary people. Those who know him, who we've talked to, say that he's spent the better part of his life focused on the admirable mission of advocating for the poor and marginalized. As we look out over a dark and now relatively desolate square, I'm struck by the words Pope Leo delivered in Italian in his first Mass this morning, quoting Peter chapter 2, verse 9, "For we are the people whom God has chosen as his own, so that we may declare the wonderful deeds of him who called us out of his darkness into his marvelous light." And in a world many believe is growing increasingly dark, tonight 1.4 billion Catholics are hoping their new leader will steer the world into the light. That's all from us here in Vatican City. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a wonderful weekend.